Look in the mirror and how do you feel? Great? Fabulous? Horrible? Millions, probably many millions around the world struggle every day with anxiety, guilt, and shame about their bodies. Too fat, too thin, too tall, too short, wrong color, wrong size, wrong muscle tone. When our next guest wrote her first book, Fat is a Feminist Issue, back in 1978, the psychological problems of body image and eating disorders, they weren't even the stuff of headlines yet. Well, over 30 years later, we're familiar with the problem. We've named many of them, but they haven't gone away. In fact, the fixation on attaining the perfect physique has exploded into a $160 billion a year industry. Susie Orbach is a psychoanalyst and co-founder of the Women's Therapy Center. She's the author of many books. The latest is Bodies. I'm very happy it brings you here to GRITtv, Susie. I was an early reader of Fat is a Feminist Issue and glad to have done it. Sort of sad to read all the data in your book that first book didn't work.
Yeah, well, you know, one can have the arrogance of being a first-time author and think you're going to change the world. But no, the world bites back and continues to find more and more imaginative, beguiling, captivating ways of producing body hatred. And not only that, exporting it all around the world.
You talk about body terror, but let's talk about the $160 billion first. Where is that coming from? What's it being spent on?
That's only one bit. I think that's the diet industry. I mean, there's, you know, how does the diet industry work? It works by selling you diet product. But
first it works by telling me I'm too fat.
Of course it does. But if diets work, you'd only have to do them once. So they require a very, very high failure or recidivism rate, as they say, so that you become a repeat customer. And they require the change in and the invention or promulgation of a measure called the BMI, which makes us all hysterical about the size we are. And
that's even I probably do know what it means, the body mass
But it's
index.
Good that you don't know what it means because really it's a spurious measure. And if you think about the fact that people are divided into normal, overweight, and obese, and you see the stats that say 50% of our population is going to be overweight in 5 years, and a third of children are. It's just really important to remember that George Clooney is in the obese category. Now, that is just so not true. That you realize that there's a very nefarious, I can say this on this show,
yes, you can.
Very nefarious relationship between the construction of a body size and disease entities called obesity and the interests of the food industry, which of course is the diet industry. So that's just one piece of the industry. I mean, there's a whole other industry. There's the cosmetic beauty industry, which is far more successful than the general GDP, which I think last year before the crash, the UK and the American GDPs were something like 2.5%.
Yeah.
Beauty companies, you know, the stuff we've got on our face to go on television, 7% growth per year. Really successful company like L'Oreal, 14%. How do they do it? Because they find more and more bits of us that we need to transform, and larger markets, and younger markets.
So your book, Bodies, which is largely focusing on your clients,
well, yes,
are your clients just victims of advertising?
Well, I think we know we're all more complex than that. And it isn't really, I mean, I've got a lot of stories there about trying to show about the destabilization of the body from people who want to be paraplegics to people who are very scared to be touched or boys who can't grow. So it's not only clinically based, although it is. No, I think it's much more complex. I mean, what do you do when you live in a visual culture? We come into the world not of our own making, right? As I think that guy Karl Marx once said. And you have to engage with what is there. And if one of the things that you are offered is to engage with yourself as a consumer and to construct a form of self that is about transformation because you live in environments where your body has become a product, then you are actively engaged. You're not just being stupid about this.
Well, tell us about Andrew, because he's such an extraordinary case that I think it'll crystallize some of this for people.
Well, I wanted to start the book on Andrew because this is a young man who grew up in the 50s and was in the military. He was a nice suburban young man, had children, but but he was overwhelmed with the desire to do away with his legs. And he longed for this. He used to practice packing them in, 2 legs into one, practice walking with a stick. And I suppose he was not my patient, okay? The psychoanalyst's job is to think about, what on earth is that about? Yeah. What does it mean that somebody feels that their limbs are surplus to requirements? Whereas for most people, that would seem most odd. And he went to therapy. It was unsuccessful insofar as the therapist wouldn't grant him his wish.